and welcome viewers. I'm Pia and you're watching Primetime Asia on NewsX World. On that note, let's take a look at the headlines this hour. Russian President Vladimir Putin is all set to visit India from the 4th to the 5th of December for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. Talks are likely to focus on defense cooperation and the civil nuclear sector. A senior Taiwan security official has accused China of staging mock attacks on foreign naval vessels in the Taiwan Strait. China claims that it alone exercises sovereignty and jurisdiction over the strait. Amid the ongoing elections in Honduras, Taiwan has stated that it wants to re-establish ties with its former ally. In response to this, China has emphasized upon the One China principle and claimed that this is the political foundation for China-Honduras ties. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has praised US President Donald Trump, stating that he hopes the United States can help resume dialogue with North Korea. He's also emphasized that talks with Trump have given a sense of kinship. The death toll from the deadly high-rise apartment fire in Hong Kong has climbed to 159, with 31 still missing as per reports. Officials have stated that 6 more people have been arrested in this particular case. Tropical storms and heavy rainfall have caused devastating floods and landslides across much of South and Southeast Asia. The death toll across Indonesia, Thailand and Sri Lanka has now climbed to 1,250. Afghanistan's Taliban administration and Pakistan have held fresh peace talks in Saudi Arabia and have reportedly agreed to maintain a ceasefire. This is the latest attempt to dial down tensions between the South Asian neighbors. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. Russian President Vladimir Putin will visit India from tomorrow, that is the 4th of December, and over the 5th as well for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit, aimed at strengthening ties and especially amidst rising geopolitical tensions. Now, this visit comes as India faces punitive US tariffs over its oil imports from Russia, but remains committed to its strategic partnership with Moscow. The summit will focus on expanding trade, with India and Russia aiming to boost bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030. The current standing is, of course, at $68 billion. Discussions are expected to include defense cooperation, including the potential purchase of Su-57 fighter jets and the S-500 missile defense system, though concerns remain about Russia's ability to fulfill these orders. India has been balancing its ties with Russia while responding to US pressure to reduce Russian oil imports. Despite this, it continues to prioritize energy security and has increased energy imports from the US. Now, this particular visit is being seen as a reaffirmation of India's independent foreign policy and its desire to deepen cooperation with Russia in the face of shifting global alliances. With us on the broadcast is Professor Veselin Popovsky, who is a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting developments. Of course, we're expecting Vladimir Putin to land in just a while. Of course, 2-day summit between Putin and Modi. We are keeping our eyes peeled at what exactly comes out of these talks. But there was, of course, a lot of talk as far as defense cooperation, civil nuclear cooperation is concerned. Apart from that, one very interesting statement from Dmitry Peskov yesterday during the press conference was regarding the war itself. The fact that he's made it clear that India's position has been appreciated, the fact that Narendra Modi has time and again, even face-to-face, emphasized that this is not an era of war. The timing of this visit is also interesting because it coincides with the fact that discussions are taking place for a peace deal with the United States of America. We saw Steve Witkoff in Moscow yesterday. The talks were about 5 hours. These are the reports that are coming in. What do you make of the timing of this particular visit and, of course, what's on the cards?
Yes, it's very interesting. A lot of events those days, every day, every hour. Although the visit was planned long ago, it's actually a very regular visit. Vladimir Putin used to come to Delhi every December for many, many years. And it was interrupted recently during the COVID, but also after the COVID because of the war in Ukraine. So it's the first visit after 4 years. So for that matter, it's interesting to see how it develops. Well, on one hand, as you say, it's no time for war. It's disappointing that a war criminal and a child abductor will be in Delhi tomorrow. On another hand, India has a historical policy of engagement with all countries. And the plan is mostly, I guess, to focus on bilateral issues, on trade, on defense, on energy and other bilateral trade and investment agreements, and less on the war in Ukraine. But on another hand, Moscow was very negative on the U.S. peace plan delivered by Witkoff and Kushner yesterday to Moscow. And we don't have any good perspective there for peace in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin repeatedly denied to accept ceasefire, offered many times by Donald Trump administration, by Ukraine, by Europeans. So we don't have much of a progress on the peace deal in Ukraine. And for that matter, the visit in India is interesting. What will be the messages that the Prime Minister Modi will put ahead here? He wants to be seen as a global leader, as playing bigger role in the world. And this is a chance, I must say. It's a very good chance for Prime Minister Modi again and again to repeat to Vladimir Putin to stop the war and to engage in much more positive developments, including with trade, with new alliances and new developments in the world. Obviously, the war in Ukraine makes Russian economy problematic, if not collapsing. And India is diversifying, in fact, its imports already, knowing that the economy will not be a good partner in the future because of the war itself. Russia cannot supply India with what India wants long term.
Indeed, and the trade deficit is something that India has raised. But apart from that, there was another very interesting statement made at the press conference yesterday. This is regarding the frozen assets and the EU's plan to use frozen Russian assets to fund the Ukrainian defense. Peskov has claimed that the EU is stealing Russian money. We've also recently seen Brussels penning down its own concerns to other European countries. It's of course concerned if Russia decides to go to the courts, all of the economic burden would be placed upon Belgium itself. In that context, it's approached the European Commission as well, seeking to, in fact, ensure that the onus lies upon everyone. Do you think then, with these concerns that Belgium has, it could further stall the process of using frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine?
Yes, Belgium has a point because most of the funds are in Brussels. And obviously, if Russia challenges and successfully in legal court that, it will be for the Belgians to pay. But I don't expect that to happen because, first of all, it will be a legal agreement for that. Part of the peace deal, and every war in the history ended with a peace deal, Russia will be demanded to pay the reparations of all the damage and all the destruction they caused in Ukraine. And the frozen assets will go to reconstructing of Ukraine, not to the military effort now, but rather later, once a peace deal is agreed, and it will be part of the reparations that Russia, the aggressor, need to pay to Ukraine, the victim. And this is how it will all be put in a legal form, which nobody in the future will be able to challenge. The Russian frozen assets will remain in the hands of Ukrainians as a long-term agreement, which will be still to be negotiated and signed. This is how I see that developing.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your analysis and insights. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus towards more news coming in. We're now learning that Taiwan is expressing gratitude and China is voicing strong displeasure after US President Donald Trump signed the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act into law. The legislation requires the US State Department to regularly review and update its guidelines for official interactions with Taipei, with reviews taking place at least once every 5 years. Taiwan's presidential office has stated that the law underscores the value of US-Taiwan engagement and reflects shared democratic principles. Its Foreign Minister Lin Chialung has added that the updated process could allow Taiwanese officials greater access to US federal agencies for meetings. However, China has sharply criticized the move. Its Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian has reiterated Beijing's opposition to any official US-Taiwan contact. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Collins Chong-Yu Keat, Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst from University Malaya in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. I wanted to understand from you at the outset, what are in fact the ramifications of this particular law being signed, because on one hand we've been seeing Donald Trump trying to push the G2 agenda with China, and on the other, of course, there is a practical security consideration as far as Taiwan is concerned.
Well, this decision to sign this law marks a historic shift from decades of strategic ambiguity to a clearer stance now to strategic clarity. So it institutionalizes regular U.S. reviews of Taiwan policy to ensure that Washington's interaction with Taipei stays dynamic, aligned with new realities on the ground, including also as a response to Chinese military coercion and regional shifts. And this is also as a response to the accusation that Trump has eventually forced Takaichi to alter her stance on China. So this law makes Taiwan policy no longer dependent on changing administrations, on changing policies under different leaderships, and it's now embedded in U.S. law. So it strengthens Taiwan's international standing, and it kind of formalizes direct U.S. engagement through the State Department. So this gives Taipei greater legitimacy on the world stage, and also, of course, as an ultimate warning to Beijing that U.S.-Taiwan partnership is not negotiable. It raises the political economic status, and it raises also the political cost for any potential future Chinese attempt to pressure Taiwan or to isolate Taiwan at the international stage. So it's an institutionalization framework. So it also, of course, complements Trump's Indo-Pacific framework. And by formalizing all this into law, it gives greater advantage to both, greater also maneuvering options to both Trump and also to Taipei.
Indeed, and in other news, we learned that a senior Taiwanese security official had claimed that China's military is staging mock attacks on foreign naval vessels transiting the Taiwan Strait, which is, of course, a key trade route as we all know it. Taiwan has also claimed that it is sharing intelligence with its partner countries, including the United States, including Britain, France, New Zealand as well. But it has raised alarm over the fact that such attack simulations have been increasing in recent times. It's not just Taiwan. We've also seen, as far as the South China Sea is concerned, the PLA Navy's activities have in fact augmented over there. What is Beijing trying to signal through all of this?
Well, of course, Beijing is now further pressured. It's now trapped in a corner with Takaichi's, bold move, and now is forced to respond to pacify domestic, demands, to have a more assertive stance with regards to both Takaichi and Taipei's, intent to increase its own autonomy. So of course, he has been doing this for years now. In terms of coercion, in terms of gray zone activities, not only in Taiwan Strait, but also in South China Sea. Of course, also the encirclement, the blockade of Taiwan for the past few years now. So, and this is also as a new ground for Beijing to test the waters as to how Trump will respond to this. And, and of course, we will eventually increase the lethality, the efficacy of these maneuvers, also to test the responses of Takaichi in how she will also put her words into action in terms of defending Taiwan. And of course, this is a direct response, but I would see that as an increasing move by Beijing that that has been forced to respond in this way. And of course, under Trump's administration, there's no way for President Xi to have any direct move on Taiwan. So he knows that, and Trump knows that, and of course Taiwan knows that. But Takaichi's bold new statement is a game changer in terms of providing also this direct clarity in terms of defending Taiwan, also as a pressure to the current Trump administration to do more to defend Taiwan, despite the attempts or the moves to have a smoother, much more better economic relations with Beijing in terms of the getting more benefits to the American market and the American economic situation. But all in all, I would say that this is a huge advantage to both Taiwan and Japan, and that Beijing's response has been expected, and the pressure is now on Beijing, of course, also to balance this move, not to be seen as to cause more coercive activities, which will be then used as a pretext by both Japan and Taiwan, and eventually Washington to accuse Beijing of acting more aggressively in this critical flashpoints.
All right, sir, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time, of course, sharing your analysis and insights with us on NewsX World. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus away from Taiwan towards what's taking place in South Asia. We're now learning that Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to maintain a temporary ceasefire along the 2,600-kilometer border. This comes as a result of the third round of peace talks, which have been recently held in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Although the meeting in Riyadh ended without a major long-term breakthrough on the core issue of cross-border militancy and, of course, the contentious Durand Line. The conflict was sparked by the border clashes that had taken place in October between Pakistani and Afghan militaries, which killed dozens of people. This has been the worst violence on this particular border since Taliban took over Kabul in 2021. Islamabad says that militants based in Afghanistan stage attacks in Pakistan and that Kabul has not responded to repeated calls made by Pakistan to take action against them. Meanwhile, the Taliban has strongly denied that its soil is being used by Pakistani militants. In fact, it's in turn asked Pakistan to assure and guarantee the fact that Pakistani soil should not be used for anti-Afghan activities and that foreign drones and military should not operate from Pakistani soil to target Afghanistan. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Colonel Sanjeet Sirohi, International Relations and Defence expert from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We'd earlier seen talks in Doha, which resulted in a temporary ceasefire, then Istanbul, the first phase of which completely broke down, and now, of course, Saudi Arabia also intervening, talks being held in Riyadh. Of course, we've seen Qatar and Turkey sort of try to play mediator, but what, in your assessment, does the involvement of Saudi Arabia really speak about the level, the degree of this particular conflict?
Thank you, Priya. First of all, as you have already brought out that Qatar, they had a temporary ceasefire, and Istanbul, they could not reach to any agreement. And now for last few days, we have been seeing that both the countries are accusing each other. Pakistan accusing that Afghanistan soil is being used by TTP. And from Afghanistan soil, these TTP fighters are attacking Pakistani security forces. Whereas Afghanistan is saying that the Pakistanis are bombarding their areas, and as a result of which the number of civilians have been killed. Now, latest initiative taken by Saudi Arabia is this thing in a right direction, because Saudi Arabia has got a defense deal which they had signed with Pakistan in the month of September. And according to that deal, if any country is being attacked, then it will be taken that the other countries also being attacked, and both the countries are going to fight the common enemy. So now Saudi Arabia realizes that if tomorrow Afghanistan and Pakistan, they have a conflict, then it will be very, very difficult for Saudi Arabia to support Pakistan. So as a result of that, they don't want that stage should reach where Saudi Arabia is in dilemma that whether they should support Pakistan or they should not support Pakistan. So that is the one reason why Saudi Arabia is taking the initiative. But let me tell you, this ceasefire is very, very fragile and it can be broken any time because there are a number of issues between Pakistan and Afghanistan which until they are being resolved, then you cannot establish peace between the two countries. And the major issue is that Pakistan feels that the TTP fighters or the militants, they operate from Afghan soil. Whereas Afghanistan feels that they are the Pashtun who are part of Pakistan itself and they are fighting from there. So this until this point is resolved, both the sides are not agreeing to how to resolve this. Number two is Durand line. Afghanistan, when it was agreed in Doha that it is a border, Afghanistan has refused to accept this as a border, but they don't accept Durand line as a border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So these are the two major issues. Until these are resolved, I think this ceasefire is going to remain fragile and it can break any time. It all depends on how Pakistan and Afghanistan react to that. Third point is that after the Afghan refugees were expelled from Pakistan, so this has not been taken very lightly by Afghanistan. And last is that unilaterally Pakistan decides whenever they want, they decide to close the two main points, the trading points at Torkham and Chaman, as a result of which the Afghanistan, they have to suffer. But so it is a trade war also, and their Deputy Prime Minister has already brought out that the business and the blood cannot flow together.
Yes.
So I think there are major issues, and until these issues are resolved, the ceasefire is not going to take place for a very long time. Priya.
Absolutely, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, of course, putting all of that context into perspective for our viewers. On that note, we're shifting focus to more news coming in, this time from Sri Lanka. We're now learning that severe flooding and landslides have killed over 1,400 people in Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Thailand and Malaysia as well. Indonesia is the worst hit with at least 753 deaths, followed by Sri Lanka with 465. Thailand and Malaysia have reported 185 and 3 deaths respectively. Rescue efforts are ongoing with over 1,000 people still missing and many areas cut off due to mudslides and infrastructure damage. In Indonesia itself, more than 1.5 million people have been displaced and over 2,600 are injured. The government has mobilized military resources and deployed hospital ships to affected provinces. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, the WHO is still recovering from this particular in fact, ensuring that people recover from this particular crisis. The country itself has faced an economic crisis as well. Now it faces additional challenges, including limited resources for disaster response. The country is seeking international aid, and neighboring nations like India and the UAE have launched relief efforts. Economic impacts, including damage to agriculture, are expected to strain Sri Lanka's fragile economy. In Thailand, recovery is progressing faster, with compensation provided to over 120,000 affected households, and floods have highlighted stark economic disparities, with wealthier nations better equipped to handle the crisis, while Sri Lanka is struggling to manage the devastation. News coming in from Hong Kong. The death toll in a fire that ripped through 7 high-rise towers in Hong Kong last week has risen to 159, with 31 still reported missing. The officials have stated that a total of 140 of the deceased have been identified, 91 of them women, 49 men. The youngest one to die was just 1 year old, the oldest 97. Authorities have stated that 6 more arrests have been made in the case, adding to the 13 arrested yesterday. Reports suggest a search for bodies inside all 7 of the 8 high-rise residential towers ravaged in the fire is now complete. Meanwhile, mourners in Hong Kong have gathered near the devastated Wong Fuk Kor towers to grieve the loss of life in the city's deadliest fire in decades. Listen in to what they had to say.
我觉得这么多人没有了家，接受不了。比如说我在想象，如果是我的家庭没有了老公，没有了女儿，我不知道我怎么还能不能活下去。我就觉得现在最主要的就是平复一下大家的心情，失去了亲人，失去了家，什么都没有了。一个人孤零零的活在这个世上，没有了盼头怎么办？不是说要捐多少钱给他们，主要的我觉得是心里的这个创伤很难平复的，这是最主要的。
希望佢去咗人安息啦。在生嘅人嚟計，望佢哋勇敢啲咯，面對咯。終歸嚟計，我俾啲祝福仲係在生嗰啲人咯。至於死咗嘅人嘅，一路好走咯。終歸講嚟講去4個字，就係慘絕人寰。
In other news, the Indian rupee has fallen past a key level of 90 against the dollar for the first time in history, extending an 8-month decline as weak trade investment flows and a corporate rush to hedge against weakness sapped the currency. The rupee is one of Asia's worst performers, having fallen over 5% against the dollar year to date, as steep US tariffs of up to 50% on Indian goods crimp exports to its biggest market. Meanwhile, in terms of portfolio outflows, India is one of the worst hit markets globally, with foreign investors net selling of its stocks amounting to nearly $17 billion so far this year. The weakness in portfolio investment has also coincided with a slowdown in foreign direct investment, adding to the pressure on the Indian economy. But we do know that domestic consumption is at an all-time high. On that note, viewers, due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on Primetime Asia. We will continue to track all of these updates very, very closely, but we slip into a quick short break.
What we can do